Let's kick things off. My name is Johan Bergström. I'm head of marketing and sales at CodeMill. And I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to this first webinar with CodeMill and Embrace. And we're so excited to see so many of you wanting to join us. Embrace and CodeMill have collaborated for many years, and we're thrilled to show what this collaboration has amounted to. First, some ground rules. Please mute and turn off your video while the presentations are going on. We obviously encourage questions, but please add them to the chat and we'll go through them after the presentations. And finally, we will send out a form after the webinar that we'd like you to respond to. Okay. So the speakers today are Neil Anderson, Chief Revenue Officer at CodeMill, and Frédéric Crétet, Head of Operations at Embrace. So before we kick things off, Emmanuel, do you want to say a few words about the agenda?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Pain. I'm in charge of business development here at Embrace and working very closely with CodeMill on many developments and many customers engagements. And what we wanted to do is that through many projects that we covered in last year, at the end of last year, and even at the beginning of this year, we see common topics and important ones that we see in our industry that we wanted to cover. And the first one is all about shapes, because in today's media landscape, efficiency is key. We hear about efficiency everywhere. We need efficiency in operations, efficiency with stacks, even with innovation. And Shapes really simplifies your ingest workflows, allowing to save time, resources, and basically complex ingest workflow can be very painful. And there are many ways today in a modern media supply chain to facilitate that process and doing that content ingestion at scale. And Neil, in a minute, with Fred, will show you about this. Next up, we have AI tooling. We all know that AI is not a strategy, but the thing is that today with global content distribution, we know that typically transcription, localization have become more important than ever. And AI tooling leverages any advanced models to simplify these processes, basically say goodbyes to many manual tasks. And what is more important, and this is what we will show and try to demonstrate, is how AI can at the same time achieve accuracy and efficiency by speeding up tasks. It's never about replacing people because human and people are your biggest assets in your operation. Moving on to our third topic is all about enhanced content delivery, because metadata today plays a crucial role in content management and delivery. You will learn how easy it can be with Scantemo and Pulse-it to enrich, augment metadata to monetize content or provide the best user experience to audiences. What's more, low-code orchestration to ensure smooth and efficient metadata pipeline manipulation, putting you in control every step of the way. Last but not least, we will cover an important aspect about hybrid architecture. Again, in today's media landscape, it's common to encounter a mix of new and older technology, and hybrid architecture allows you to integrate into this mixed ecosystem, providing you compatibility, interoperability with legacy systems, cloud servicing, and in the end, empowering your entire team to strive in this new modern environment. So that's a big one. I will now leave the floor to Neil and Fred for the presentation, and I will take your questions and ask the question at the Q&A session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Yuan and Emmanuel. So this morning we're really talking about media supply chain, modernization of the media supply chain, and the first stage is around ingest. As I'm sure many of you know, the need for handling complex ingest processes has never become more important. Because of the need to deliver content to many different platforms, we also have the need from a studio or broadcaster or a media services provider point of view to be able to handle media ingest from many different sources. So, for example, you may be working with a localization company in one particular region, Latin America, where you're working with Spanish and Portuguese language versioning, and those external suppliers need to provide you with the subtitles and dub tracks in order to deliver that different language content into your platform. So in that use case, of course, we need to be able to handle the external subtitle delivery and ingest, but we also have media and video ingest as well as all of the different audio tracks that we might need to be managing, as well as often sidecar metadata in various different formats. So in the example that Fred is showing here, we have an asset, and this is in Cantimo 6, which features our Accurate player. The beauty of this system is that we can see all of the different shapes associated with our video and our assets. So different audio, different video types, so proxies, high-res versions, mezzanine formats, ProRes or MXF, and support for all of the different subtitle formats as well. So managing this process, if you have to do it manually, is very time-consuming, very complicated, and often you have suppliers who are delivering content in different formats and different versions. Even for different shows and different series, you may have delivery of content which you need to manage that ingest in a different way between different suppliers. So complex media ingest is kind of one of the first challenges that we have around the media supply chain. So what do we mean when we say shapes? Shapes is essentially a term that is used within Cantimo to define all of these different types of asset that make up the overall package. So it could be an audio shape, it could be a different video shape, perhaps a different format of the video, different codecs, different resolutions, SD, HD, UHD, and also different sidecar metadata that might be associated with the asset. So managing these shapes, ingesting them, and making sure that they're all correct and they play back together once they're into the system, into your archive or your library system. So Fred is obviously showing you Cantimo 6 at the moment, but from an Embrace PulseIt point of view, the reason that we work so closely with them is because they allow our users and our customers to easily configure different workflows to manage this complex ingest process. And this is with the PulseIt solution. So here you can see an example of a complex ingest process. This is the workflow designer user interface, a very elegant and intuitive way of building these complex ingest processes. Maybe you have media coming into different S3 buckets, for example, perhaps even FTP, or being delivered from hard disk that then gets dropped into a watch folder on a piece of on-prem storage. Because Cantimo is a hybrid cloud solution, it can manage storage in any location, on-prem, in the cloud, or any combination. And with Embrace and PulseIt, we can monitor and manage those different ingest processes from different sources. So configuring that is done within the PulseIt interface. So as I said, if you've got complex workflows or different suppliers who are delivering you your content, this is how you go about doing it. Fred, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, so the biggest challenge when you have to manage complex ingest is to ingest a lot of assets with different time frame, with different people. So what is important is to simplify the maximum the process. And most of the time with the different interface, it's a complicated process. And so we have a solution to simplify, and our workflow engine will make it very easy to manage. So in this example, I will only select one folder with different shapes. So you see there is a video, a wave track, an audio track, and some subtitle tracks. And only with a very basic scan folder, I will trigger an ingest, and it will run one asset in Contemo with all these shapes. So the process is a little bit long, but I can show you the result. So with Pulse-it, we have a real-time monitoring. So I can trigger and have everything, the process of ingest media, the generation of transcoding, etc. in real time. And when the process is done, I will have directly this new asset in Contemo with directly the different shape ready to use in one time. So again, to have these results, you don't need to develop a complex script inside Contemo or whatever. You just have to configure the different tasks of we have inside the Pulse-it workflow engine, and we can create a placeholder, we can ingest, we can add a shape to an existing item. So everything is ready. You just have to connect the different box, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly, Fred. And you mentioned about adding shapes to an existing item or an existing asset, perhaps. This is very common with late deliveries. So you may have scenarios where the content is ready to be distributed, but you're still waiting for a particular language track, perhaps. And this is where having this automated ingest process not only lets us manage complex ingest at scale, but also deal with scenarios like late delivery, where you don't have to manually sift through a different storage location to ingest that particular subtitle track. It can all be handled as part of a monitored process. And that's really where Pulse-it comes in, because Pulse-it can work with Cantemo. It's deeply integrated through APIs, but also it can manage processes outside of Cantemo or outside of your archive solution or your library. So you can ensure that all of your ingest process is managed without your users having to really get heavily involved in manual import methods or manually uploading content and trying to find the right item or the right asset to associate that new subtitle or audio track with. And of course, because we're looking at media supply chain and optimization, because studios and media providers are handling more and more content at scale, the timeframes are getting tighter and tighter. Deals for new fast channels to deliver new content or access the archive and find which media is available to be distributed or to the different platforms means that the timeframes are always getting shorter and shorter. So not only managing bulk ingest automatically, but also being able to configure Pulse-it to handle these different ingest processes for different workflows, for different channels, for different platforms, or for particular shows, for example. So that's really the big value that Pulse-it brings, is that automation, but also the visibility on the status of what's going on with the ingests. And as Fred's showing here, again, working directly inside Cantemo, your users and operators can also see the status of things. They can prioritize different ingest processes. They can monitor, you can filter and sort by different types of ingest or different media, different statuses. So again, this visibility is a very common theme that we find that is challenging for a lot of customers. Where is my stuff is something that we hear about mentioned by a lot of clients. You know, what's the status of something? When is it due? I can see the deadline. Why isn't it arrived? I can see that it's blocked. We're waiting on a piece of late delivery content. The content now has arrived, but I need to prioritize that. So I can reorder my priorities and get my work in as quickly as possible. Hopefully that all makes sense. Of course, if you have any questions, do add them to the chat and we will try and answer those as we get to the end of the presentation and into the Q&A session. So thanks, Alejandro, for that question. We'll look at that a little bit later. Anything else to add on shapes, Fred, and complex ingest? I think we've covered most things.
Yeah, it's okay for me. Yes.
Great. So first, we've got our ingest. We can see that. We can manage that. We can configure complex ingest. Now we need to start looking at how we can enrich the content. How can we add metadata? So this is really where we see AI tooling coming into itself now. over the last 5 or more years, the use of machine learning, metadata, computer vision technologies, algorithms, complex models that have been trained, or even models that can be custom trained to identify specific features that are useful for your business. This is all part of what we're calling AI tooling. And this is really to speed up a lot of these tasks that have traditionally been extremely manual. We talk about things like transcribing content, translating content, identifying binge markers for VOD assets, identify suitable locations for ad breaks. These are all areas that currently are time consuming. They require a lot of manual effort, sifting through content, adding manual markers. And of course, we can do these things easily with Accurate Video, which is very commonly used for manual marking, manual QC. But when we start using AI analysis and integrating with third-party APIs and machine learning services, we can start to enrich the content and provide a lot of automated metadata that can be very useful to then allow the operators to make business decisions. So, as I've mentioned, some of those examples, why do we need transcription? Why do we need translation? Well, of course, nowadays, everybody wants to deliver content to every different platform as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So not only are we delivering content for our national platforms, our own, UK platforms, French platforms, US platforms, VOD or broadcast, or even for social media, but we want to reach the widest possible audience. So in the media supply chain, that demand for more subtitles, more dub tracks, finding suitable locations for ad breaks, whether it's for a US market, which has more ad breaks per hour, or for a UK or a French market that has fewer ad breaks per hour. These are all some of the challenges that we find from our customers are saying that they need to speed up and improve. And with Accurate Video, our web application for working with time-based metadata, this really allows the users to find and search and filter on the metadata that's being created by AI services. So as Fred's showing you here, we have a transcription that's been automatically generated. I believe this is using Speechmatics, which is a very mature transcription engine. But what's great about some of these transcription engines is they're also now offering translation, which is an incredible time saver. Now, of course, the caveat to this is that these are never 100% accurate. So there will always be a human in the loop that will make decisions over the accuracy of the translations, the accuracy of where the binge markers are, where the recommended ad breaks would be. But ultimately, people need to make those final decisions. But speeding up this process spends... Oh, it hits the post. Oh, there we go. Some amazing Premiership football. So speeding up these processes, but also now we're finding that transcription can generate summarization. So using generative AI, we can now get some pretty accurate and fantastic summarization of content. Again, a big time saver versus having to watch or listen to this content in real time. We can now get transcriptions, translations, and summarization much, much faster than real time. So again, these are big time savers, but of course, a human will always need to go in and check spelling, check locations are accurate. A lot of the technical jargon might need to be corrected if it's been slightly misunderstood by the AI engines. So in that sense, these are providing us with a lot of time savers and able to make quick decisions. Now we can go in and edit the summaries. And you're being able to pull out keywords to enable and improve on search, for example. Being able to identify different players in sports is also incredibly important for brand sponsors. Logo identification becomes very important as well around branding and merchandising of content. So in this particular use case, some of these AI services are big time savers. When we talk about the media supply chain, it's often around finding where the binge markers are, recommending ad break locations, and being able to check those locations and go, yes, this is a good location. And because these AI engines have improved over the last few years, it's not just about identifying where the black frames are. That's very easy to do, but more about finer details. Where are the pauses in speech? Where is there a change in the semantics of a discussion between two scenes? Might that be an even better place for an ad break than a simple few black frames? So some of these AI services, for example, Vion Labs is an example of a highly trained ad break recommendation engine. It's trained across different genre and can identify great locations and rank the quality of those locations for ad breaks. Again, these are areas where we're seeing AI services mature, and as well as the ability to train custom models as well to identify specific types of end credits for a particular broadcaster, for example. So as Fred's showing you here, we've got the user designer interface for Pulse-it and creating these steps to analyze the content, to send the media proxy, which is generated as part of the ingest process, send that proxy, whether it's the video proxy or the audio proxy, to an AI service to analyze it, to get that metadata back, and also to format that metadata into something that's useful for a different platform or service. So perhaps you want to get a JSON back from an audio transcription or an XML, depending upon what those needs are with the downstream services. So for ad breaks, often we're working with ultimately SCTI markers that are going out onto different VOD platforms, or ad break markers that would go into a linear playout server, for example. So again, with Pulse-it, we have that automation. It can happen in the background. So users aren't necessarily having to manually trigger this analysis. But we also, because we have the integration between Cantimo and Embrace's Pulse-it engine, we can also allow users to manually trigger these processes as well if they need to. And again, this is part of the deep integration that we have. So in a nutshell, that's kind of really where AI fits into the workflow. It's really about saving time, increasing throughput, and aid decision-making overall to speed up many of these media supply chain tasks. Fred, anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, I can add. There is new AI service probably every day, so you probably need to want to add a new feature in Contemo. So with Pulse-it, you can easily connect any new services. Most of the time, it's based on some REST web services. So we have all the generic tasks in the workflow engine to connect. You see, I have REST and SOAP web services task. So with that, you can connect to any modern web services. So here you see that you have a box which trigger Speechmatics, but tomorrow, if you want to do another integration, you can do it very, very easily. To have this task, Speechmatics, we didn't have to do any bespoke development. It's just a configuration of a workflow like this one, and we have a feature to transform a complex workflow to a new task. So if I double click on my Speechmatics task here, I can access to the source of this bespoke task, and the source is another workflow. Why? Because it's just a few lines of Python to trigger the transcription, and that's it. Pulse-it, it's a low-code solution. That means you have generic tasks to do the maximum of you have to do. But if you need to do something very specific, you can write a few lines of code to solve your problem. And with that, you can integrate and communicate with any kind of services. And of course, you get data from the new AI service, and you can back this new metadata to Contemo very, very easily. And if you need to transform the metadata, for example, you get XML and you need to transform that to JSON for some reason, everything is already pre-built in Pulse-it. So for example, we have in file management here, I have everything to read and convert XML file on the shelf. So it's very, very easy. For example, to generate this workflow, to integrate a transcription workflow with Speechmatics, it's just a matter of some hour. So once you know how to use Pulse-it, it's just some configuration. You have to do some tests, and maybe in 4 hours, your workflow is integrated, and you can integrate it inside Contemo.
Yeah, and you made a very good point at the beginning there, Fred, about new AI services. Every show I think any of us ever attend, we get approached by different AI vendors, startups with new and interesting algorithms that they've trained or custom trainable algorithms. So what we find is that, yeah, the need to connect to different services to generate this time-based metadata is something that's really important. It's something that, as from a CodeMill point of view, we want to avoid hard coding integrations into every different AI service, because next week there will be a new AI service. And this is really the value that Pulsit brings to us. It enables Pulsit to handle these integrations through low code, and then to be able to connect the service to Cantimo to be able to trigger these automated analysis and to retrieve the metadata and bring it back into Cantimo in the right format so that users can make decisions. So yeah, very good point, Fred, there. Moving on to the next step in the agenda, we're looking now at enhanced content delivery. So now you've enriched your metadata around your content, you've identified all of your ad breaks, your markers, you've found where your transcriptions and translations have been cleaned up and have been approved, and your content summarization for your VOD platforms are kind of ready and good to go. And the next step is, well, how do you manage content delivery? So again, years ago, it was very simple. We just had a linear playout server. You would move the files to a different location, and they would end up in a watch folder that would be ingested into a playout. And at a certain time of day, the content would go on air. Of course, nowadays, linear TV is not expanding in terms of growth. It still is an important part of the market. But of course, the explosion in VOD and OTT, fast channels, but also delivering content for social media, so perhaps trailers and promos. All of these different platforms require not only different formats, codecs, different numbers of audio channels, different subtitle formats, and also different metadata for each of these different platforms. So the explosion in different content delivery platforms increases the amount of complexity that's required. And again, this is where Pulsit really adds value to our solution by managing that in an elegant way, and allowing the teams that work with this solution to be able to configure new delivery outputs very quickly and easily, and to be able to trigger those from either from within Cantimo, as Fred's showing you here, different delivery outputs, different transcoded formats, and different metadata, but also to be able to configure new destinations as required very quickly and easily through simple configuration. So again, you know, if you're a broadcaster or a VOD or an OTT platform and you sign a new licensing deal with a studio perhaps or a different supplier, you can configure that different delivery platform directly within Pulsit and then enable that workflow with Cantimo, either as an automated delivery process based on rules, based on changes in metadata or statuses or delivery dates that are set in Cantimo as metadata, or as manual processes where users can trigger a delivery process when they're sure that all of the work has been completed. So again, much like we talked about complex ingest at the beginning of the presentation, complex distribution and delivery is also becoming an incredibly time-consuming task unless it's handled in an automated and elegant way. So yeah, Fred, as you're showing here, you know, the ability to trigger those exports, to configure different distribution workflows. This is just one of the examples that Fred's showing us now.
Yes, absolutely. So it is the typical example where you have to deliver the different file for a legacy system. So I took the example of an FTP server, but sometimes you have to deliver this system like that. But with Pulsit, with one workflow, with only one trigger, and you can have a present to user different button like this one. So easy to choose what you want to do. And behind that, you can trigger, for example, an FTP. But if you want to send the file to an S3 bucket, you have a task with that where you just to easy deliver your file. You can also do the same with, for example, if you need to ingest a file from Contemo and ingest this file to Avid Media Central. It's a common use case. We have also a task for to ingest the media and easily connect and create a workflow. And for each of the different tasks in my technical workflow, I can write complex condition to imagine any crazy scenario, like move file in a specific folder, write an Excel file with a list of files deliver or whatever. We have everything to imagine this kind of scenario in Polsit.
Perfect. Thanks, Fred. So the final topic on the agenda is to really talk about architecture. So we talk about hybrid architecture in most projects that we're involved in. Why is that? And what is that? So hybrid is really where a customer has often multiple storages in different locations. That's a challenge historically, as I'm sure most of you know. There are many different silos of content, different archives in different locations, different disk storages in different locations, both within one site, but across many sites, and often across different countries, different regions, and globally distributed. This poses significant challenges for customers as they move to the cloud. Not all of that infrastructure is ready to be retired. Often we have petabyte archives stored in LTO libraries on-premise still, even digital videotapes that still need to be digitized. So it's really not as simple as saying, oh, it's no problem, everyone should just move straight to the cloud. The reality is for a lot of our customers, arguably the majority, that they still need a hybrid architecture. That is, that they need to be able to connect all of their different storages but manage them centrally from a single system. And that single system is a big trend that we see. In our case, we have customers using our Cantimo MAM as that central method of managing all of the content. So as Fred showed you, that complex ingest process, the analysis, the generation of metadata, being able to make business decisions, add markers, and then ultimately deliver to different distribution platforms from that central system. But of course, in the last few years, we've found that remote working has become increasingly important, and hybrid working. So sometimes you have operators in the office, sometimes they're working from home, and that combination of hybrid remote working is looking likely to continue for the foreseeable future. So again, having a web-based solution that users can access as a single pane of glass to be able to see exactly what's going on in the system, the statuses of things, what tasks they're responsible for, which workflows are in progress, which are outstanding or need to be prioritized. This centralized approach is really the foundation of a hybrid cloud solution, where you're bringing together a lot of on-prem infrastructure, often legacy systems that are maybe in the process of being migrated, or retiring of older hardware and moving that media to the cloud. But often we still have permanent sites where there are physical facilities. You may have master QC suites, post-production studios, localization teams all over the world. And that hybrid architecture is really where Cantimo with Polsit becomes incredibly useful, so that you can manage those ingests from different locations. You can bring the proxies into a cloud-based deployment of Cantimo while still managing your on-prem storages, as well as managing cloud-based storages like S3 buckets or archives in Glacier or other storage types as well. So that hybrid architecture really helps global teams to work together collaboratively and consistently through a single user interface and a user experience. And again, because both Cantimo and Polsit are browser-based, the need for remote working is essentially the same as if they're in the office. From a user's perspective, it's really transparent to them whether they're working from home or from a different location, or if they're on premise and they're connected to high performance storage. So that's really the sort of the last part of the overall presentation around hybrid architecture. It reduces silos. It allows us to manage multiple sites, to consolidate and standardize. And as a lot of our customers are asking for, they're wanting to build these Starship Enterprise, the single solution that manages all of the sites, all of the silos, and all of the teams together. And that's really what the Cantimo solution affords us, with this and ability to manage remote storages, and with Polsit to manage all of the different automated processes that each of these locations might have. So Fred, over to you. Anything to add to that from your point of view?
Yes, to illustrate that, the way Polsit is designed, you have a server and you add worker node. So each time you have a technical workflow, it's a worker node which will doing the process, and you can have any number of worker node in your system, and the worker node could be on the cloud, on the premises, and you can add multiple group of worker node and some worker node in the AWS, for example, and some worker node in your premises. So if you need to access file directly to the production storage and upload this file to on one cloud system or whatever, you can have an hybrid architecture, and everything could be managed by the same workflow and orchestration engine.
Exactly.
Any other stuff before we go to the Q&As?
I think I've said enough, certainly.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil, for the presentation. Thank you, Fred. We have a couple questions in the chat, so maybe we can start with the one related to shapes, related to the first topic that we covered today, regarding. So you want to take this one, maybe, Neil, in the chat? So how do you automatically relate a shape to its pertaining asset, because there might be a lot of media in the library? How does Cantemo know which shapes belong together?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of different methods that customers typically use. So often we have upstream metadata from a planning system, a scheduling system, a traffic system. And that is where all of the initial planning goes into these processes. That metadata is often pushed into Cantemo through our API, and that creates what are called placeholders. So the placeholder is where we have metadata that says, okay, this asset will have this video format. It might be in several different shapes. Maybe we will have an MXF, a red camera file, a couple of different proxies, maybe a mezzanine file as well, and it will have this many audio channels, subtitle tracks, and maybe some XML or sidecar metadata. So that placeholder full of metadata is really part of the first step around ingesting of content and knowing what media is expected to arrive into Cantemo. So as you can see here, Fred is showing us a number of these different placeholders in Cantemo. And as the media is delivered to the different storage locations, again, if suppliers are told you need to push this content to this S3 bucket, for example, at that point that the media starts to arrive, Cantemo is monitoring those different storage locations and looking for specific metadata or specific file paths or specific file names, or perhaps even manifest files, so sidecar files with metadata in it, that's going to automatically trigger that ingest process, which will then associate those different shapes and those different media with the placeholder that's in Cantemo. At that point, that's where Pulseit kicks off that ingest. It picks up all of those different assets from their different storages, handles the ingest and transcoding that goes on within Cantemo to generate proxies, and then checks in all of the relevant metadata and media into that placeholder to complete the ingest task. So that's one particular method, and typically used for automatically relating different shapes to an item or to an asset. Hopefully that answers your question, Alejandro, and thanks for that.
Thank you, Neil. We have another question regarding the AI tooling about regarding the transcription. So are transcriptions searchable from portal search?
Yeah.
And to find asset, what content an individual mention or a phrase said by someone. So can you delve a little bit into how this works exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Mubarak, and I forgot to mention that. Yes, absolutely. You can search, as Fred's showing you here, all of the metadata that's generated from these different AI services, or in fact, any time-based metadata can be searched for within Cantemo. So if you do generate transcriptions, and perhaps you extract keywords or the names of players, for example, or different phrases, then all of these things can be searched for in Cantemo. And also, if it's a transcription, we can actually display these as captions or subtitles in the player as well. So yeah, these are all sort of standard functionality in terms of aiding search, but also to take those transcriptions and make them more useful as Fred's showing, with summarization or generating rough subtitles that can then be cleaned up in subtitle editing tools. So yeah, it's a good comment and definitely a strong use case.
Thank you, Neil. Any other questions? Don't be shy. When is Kantemo 6 launching? So maybe this is for Yuan or Neil.
So yeah,
teaser. It's a great teaser.
It's a great teaser. So I think the press release is drafted. I'm pretty sure we're about to officially announce it as shipping any day now. So it will be on limited release. So the first release of Kantemo 6 will be for new deployments for new customers, and then as we further refine the release and obviously we go bug hunting and make sure that there's no issues, we will start to enhance the Kantemo 6 release further. We certainly have new features we want to add in very quickly, and then we will start testing the upgrade process to make sure that that's a smooth process as well. Not only have we changed a lot of the front end functionality, as Fred was showing you a bit, we've changed the UI, we've refreshed it, we've improved the user experience. So it's quite a more modern, more sophisticated way and more elegant way of working in terms of Kantemo, fully responsive UI. But also now we have Accurate Player built into Kantemo 6 to handle the playback of all these different shapes, the different subtitles, the different audio tracks, even the different versions of the media that are being stored in Kantemo. We want to make sure that this release is carefully managed in terms of the rollout to ensure that for existing customers, they're familiar with the new interface and the new ways of working and the enhanced functionality. So yeah, Kantemo 6 is essentially shipping as of now. So thank you for putting us on the spot there.
Another question from Thomas. So how do worker nodes communicate with each other in a hybrid context? So
yeah, absolutely.
Fred, you took the example of having a couple of nodes in the cloud, a couple of nodes maybe on-prem. So is it working through API through VPN tunnel? How does that work exactly?
Yes, the concept is to have a VPN with the server and the different worker nodes, but everything is based on some web protocols. So basically, we have RabbitMQ and HTTP, HTTPS, and that's it. And everything is through SSL encryption, so it's fine for the security side. So it's only web protocol, so a basic VPN connection, and you are good.
Yeah, and with the server agents, they're all connecting through the API, so through securely authenticated keys, and as Fred said, for VPN to connect all of these together through a single network environment, whether you're on-prem or in the cloud or a mixture of both. And that's really the kind of the key to the hybrid cloud deployment is those remote worker nodes. So not only are they managing the on-prem storages, but they're also handling any transcoding requirements on-prem. So whether you're just generating proxies that you then upload and store in S3 with your Kantemo deployed in the cloud, or you're wanting to keep the high-res on-prem and only move it to the cloud for archiving, or you want to move high-res between different sites, that's what the server agent lets you do. So it's essentially a kind of a headless server agent that provides all of the core functionality around media management, ingest and transcoding, metadata analysis, etc., and it essentially communicates with the mothership.
I think, Neil, you partially covered the next question regarding the worker nodes as well, and how they are able to generate proxies on ground. Are these proxies saved? Are these proxies saved in the cloud or kept on-prem with their corresponding masters? I guess this is really related on how you want to implement your supply chain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely right. I mean, Alejandro, yeah, good questions again. I mean, typically in a hybrid cloud deployment, the Kantemo server is running in the cloud, and the proxies are stored in the cloud. So once the media is ingested locally on-prem, that proxy file obviously is typically a very small file. is moved to the cloud, and the high res often stays on-prem until such time as business logic or rules say that it needs to be moved. But you could keep proxies on-prem as well if you wanted to. I'm not sure there's a significant benefit in keeping a proxy on-prem in that scenario if you have a hybrid deployment. But it's not just to generate proxies. So as I said, you can create mezzanine files as well. The built-in transcoder is a full broadcast quality transcoder. So you can generate ProRes, you can generate MXF, you can generate different VOD assets on-prem. So again, you don't necessarily have to use a cloud-based transcoder if you want to keep that high-res transcoding on-premise. Again, that's quite a useful benefit. As you know, cloud transcoding is more pay-as-you-go. But if you have on-prem compute infrastructure, then you can benefit from using that when you're creating your different mezzanine files.
All right. Any other questions? So yes, obviously, I can see the conversation in the chat. Obviously, Pulsit is already working with the current version of Cantemo, and basically, we also have, yeah. So Neil, you want to say a word about this and the fact that we have also the Accurate Player SDK available inside forms as well. So
that's worth mentioning, actually. Yeah, Pulsit has been working with Cantemo for many years. What, 5 to 10 years, probably, I think. Yep. We have a number of joint customers using them together, so it's a very mature solution. And as Emmanuel said, Pulsit is also integrated with our Accurate Player SDK and Accurate Video tools. So what we do find with some customer workflows, especially around ingest, is that they want to actually ingest and QC their content before they then bring that content into Cantemo. So almost a pre-QC stage where they want to be able to manage that outside of Cantemo before they then bring in the accepted or the approved assets into Cantemo. So having the SDK and Accurate Video integrated with Pulsit means that some of these processes can be handled outside of the MAM as well. And that has a lot of value too for certain use cases around things like QC, but also other types of tasks where you don't want to clog up the Cantemo system with transient data, which is often the case with some of these processes. So yeah, that's a good point as well.
Worth mentioning as well that regarding deployment and cloud deployment, we have a Kubernetes version as well for Pulsit. For the ones who want to have high availability, high scalability, this is also a possible options for the ones who are more and more into cloud, less and less into on-prem and legacy hybrid stuff. Any other questions from everyone from the audience?
Yeah, it's probably worth touching a bit more on the hybrid cloud and why the hybrid cloud. I mean, we've talked about remote working and managing multiple storages, but using the cloud to host the main Cantemo server and the main Pulsit engine, server engine, is beneficial. You mentioned the Kubernetes deployment with Pulsit, but having that scalability and the resilience in the cloud, so being able to have the systems deployed in different availability zones, for example, or replicated into different regions for even higher availability, to be able to reconfigure or scale these services on demand. These are all parts of the benefits of using the cloud for hosting the main services. Obviously, we can also leverage a lot of serverless architectures, whether it's for databases or transcoding or storage provisioning. These are all areas that really give us benefit in the cloud, rather than traditionally where you would buy expensive hardware on-prem or have multiple replicated hardware in different data centers for redundancy. It also makes migrating to different services or to leveraging different cloud services much easier once you're in the cloud too. So that hybrid approach is really where customers see the benefits these days. And we've been running these solutions in the cloud as hybrid for, I think, at least 7 or 8 years now. So it's become increasingly common, especially for new deployments, but also with customers who are on-prem looking to retire their older hardware. Yeah, final point from Julien and from MC as well. So Emotion Systems is a very well-known audio analysis engine and manages things like loudness and analysis of the loudness and being able to normalize audio. This is quite an important part of the media supply chain. Again, I didn't mention it earlier, but QC and Auto QC, again, these are services that get used within the media supply chain around ingest process and QC processes. And using some of these analysis engines generates a lot of time-based metadata, whether it's a vid checker, Auto QC, or an emotion systems, audio QC, and being able to store that metadata, to be able to view that metadata in Cantimo, in Accurate Video, with Pulsit, really, again, is about saving time and improving the user experience so that users aren't having to wade through long PDFs, which is especially time consuming around Auto QC of any kind. So the visibility and visualization of these time-based metadata markers, it's not just about AI, but about some of these automation engines that generate time-based metadata. So being able to identify where there are problems, frame accurately, and then to be able to make a decision on that content. That's really about speeding up the media supply chain. So yeah, good comments from Julien and MC there. Any final questions now as we wrap up?
Neil, I have maybe one question. So we touched on the fact that having a MAM plus a very powerful orchestration engine and this ability also to build your own user experience, I mean, your own UI for your users. I mean, connecting all these systems, these people, these processes. You touched about micro location for productions, global operations where you have multiple sites, etc. Can you touch a little bit on II-VI? First question that comes to mind is security. It's an essential element, and how do we handle security? And another one is around what's happening sometimes upstream, and especially for broadcasters where we know that live is critical. How do we connect to more live type of workflows? Are we into this type of workflows at all? And if yes, how do we play?
Okay, so I mean, from a security point of view, obviously you have your on-prem infrastructure, you have your cloud environment. Often these will be connected through what's known as a virtual private cloud, through something like a AWS Direct Connect service. So you're extending the network from on-prem into that cloud environment. So from a network point of view, your users see a single network, the system sees a single network, but your users are logging in and authenticating through, maybe they're connecting to Active Directory where they're authorized to get access into certain environments. But we can also connect to things like single sign-on services, multi-factor authentication services as well. So that now gets your user into the environment. And from there, they typically put into a group of users which are allocated permissions and roles, and therefore they can get access to different workflows, different tasks, different user interfaces within this application environment. When we talk about media supply chain, we're typically talking about tasks. So this is another important area where users want to be able to work on the tasks that have been allocated to them, or to a group of users. Maybe a QC team in an EMEA region is responsible for QCing a certain content that's arriving from a certain location into a storage environment, and they get notifications that these are the tasks that they need to work on. So managing tasks is a very important part of the media supply chain. And with Pulsit, we have the ability to create these task lists and to create custom forms for users as well, so they can see exactly what the task is that's required of them, what metadata is associated with the task, so things like deadlines or different platforms that they're expected to meet, the QC task needs to meet the requirements for. So task management is another area that Pulsit handles very well with Cantimo, and being able to create these custom forms is what we can embed into Cantimo, into the user interface, so that the users, when they log in, they can go to the Cantimo dashboard and they can see the tasks that they're specifically allocated. So again, this is where flexibility of creating custom forms and being able to manage tasks becomes quite important in the media supply chain. And obviously, from a security point of view, we're talking about often pre-release content. So authenticating your users, enabling them to log in through secure means. But also you can take it as far as putting content protection in. So using things like DRM solutions. So with Cantimo 6, we have Accurate Player, which supports DRM. So again, you can prevent things like screen recordings, screenshots. Of course, you can prevent downloading of content through permissions and roles. And you can do things like visible watermark burn-ins, even forensic watermark tracking if that's needed. But again, these things like DRM and forensic watermarking, these are often third-party APIs that you would integrate using the Pulseit workflow engine to make that process streamlined and automated. So yeah, it's a good question around security. And the second point you made, Emmanuel, just go over it again for me.
So it was maybe we're around the top of the hour. It was about live, but maybe that's
live. Yes, that's right.
That might be the subject for another webinar. If
Potentially.
But because we have a lot to say in that area, but unless you want to say just in 1 or 2 sentences something, I think we should.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have today, Cantimo has support for growing files. So we have the ability to receive a growing live feed from potentially any storage location or live ingest recording system as a growing file. As that file is being recorded to storage, we can start reading it and generating a proxy that can be viewed in Cantimo, and users can start logging on that file, making time-based markers and ranges for highlights, for example, if it's sports or news or other types of live events. We've also been looking at improving the live to VOD workflow with our Accurate Video tools. So to do live logging, to do live editing on these growing files to create those highlights and EDLs that you can then send either to Adobe Premiere, for example, or to a transcoder to render a VOD asset. So this is an area that we're looking at over the course of this year. And if it's of interest, then do get in touch. But I think that's as much as we can say on the live to VOD side at the moment.
Johan, you want to wrap up things?
Yeah, thank you. My main message here is that, of course, we will send out a form about the webinar that we would be grateful if you have a chance to respond to. So please fill it out and let us know what you think about this session. We're planning to do more of these, so we're excited to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, everyone. We look forward to meeting you again very soon. Thank you to our speakers, Neil, Fred, great job. And we wish you all a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.